So let's dive into this fascinating comparison between Bitcoin ordinals and Ethereum NFTs, exploring how these digital collectibles really work,
Yep, it's really intriguing. What's striking is how both platforms offer unique ways to encapsulate art and ownership, right?
Absolutely. And it's like um, Bitcoin ordinals essentially repurpose Satoshis, the tiny units of Bitcoin, to carry extra data as NFTs, while Ethereum uses smart contracts to create these digital assets.
So, with Bitcoin ordinals, each Satoshi can be uniquely identified and inscribed. That sounds kind of like a built in numbering system.
Exactly. They rely on what's called the Ordinals protocol. It uses the natural order of Satoshis, where each one gets a unique number assigned as it's minted without needing an extra layer like a
Yeah.
smart contract.
And then on the Ethereum side, NFTs are created with smart contracts and standards like ERC 721 and ERC 1155, which define not just the token, but also the metadata and sometimes even royalty functions, right?
Right on. Ethereum NFTs, built on smart contracts, allow creators to enforce things like royalties and establish a dynamic link to off-chain data, meaning the actual artwork can be stored elsewhere, like on IPFS.
It's kind of like comparing a handwritten note etched on an indestructible stone versus a digital document that links to a cloud folder. Would that be a fair analogy?
Yeah, well, it's like the Bitcoin approach is totally on-chain. Everything is stamped on the Satoshi and stays immutable forever, whereas Ethereum offers that flexibility with its off-chain component, letting you update or even enhance the asset as needed.
Right. That's neat. But don't you think the lack of smart contract functionality in Bitcoin might actually limit the creative possibilities? I mean, without built-in royalty systems or dynamic metadata, isn't it a bit restrictive?
I see your point, but I think that it also means Bitcoin ordinals carry the full force of Bitcoin's security and decentralization. They can't be altered, which gives collectors a level of immutability that some purists really appreciate.
True. But then again, wouldn't that immutability also mean that any mistakes in the inscription or unexpected issues are, like, permanent?
Exactly, and that's a trade-off. On Ethereum, any error might be patchable or compensated for with updates through the smart contracts logic, albeit with potential centralization risks. Whereas Bitcoin ordinals once inscribed are set in stone, no pun intended.
Right. Interesting. What about storage? Ethereum NFTs often store heavy data off-chain, but Bitcoin ordinals store everything on-chain, right?
Yes, that's a key difference. Ethereum NFTs usually refer to digital art stored on something like the interplanetary file system, meaning the NFT on Ethereum is more like a pointer. Bitcoin ordinals, on the other hand, inscribe the data directly onto the Satoshi, which might increase transaction sizes but ensures that the full artifact stays with the Bitcoin blockchain.
So, in other words, Ethereum NFTs basically allow for more layered and complex ecosystems with marketplaces, right?
Exactly. Ethereum definitely has a broader ecosystem since it had a head start with digital art back in 2017, built on well-known standards and marketplaces that support a variety of NFT transactions.
Yes. And Bitcoin ordinals emerging in early 2023 with the work of Casey Rodarmore are kind of catching up in a niche of, I guess, digital art collectors who appreciate Bitcoin's legacy.
Right, they're like a renaissance of sorts on the Bitcoin network. It's quite cool how the recent advancements in Bitcoin like the SegWit and Taproot updates paved the way for these ordinals by improving transaction structure and security.
That's true. The Taproot update, for example, not only improved privacy, but also increased block capacity. So it wasn't just a minor tweak, it was significant enough to reshape how Bitcoin can handle extra data, right?
Correct. And it's like these updates didn't change Bitcoin's core essence, but unlocked totally new use cases. Ordinals capitalize on these improvements, allowing digital art to be inscribed directly on Bitcoin without altering the core protocol.
Yeah. Oh, now I remember reading that with ordinals. Since there's no traditional smart contract, creators don't receive royalties. That's a pretty big deal in the art world, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Ethereum NFTs have often implemented royalty mechanisms through smart contracts, which means creators can earn from secondary sales. With Bitcoin Ordinals, that aspect is missing since it's purely an inscription process on a Satoshi, and marketplace conventions alone enforce any kind of resale revenue sharing.
That difference in supporting creators could influence which platform artists choose to work with. It's almost a philosophical split between absolute permanence versus flexibility and ongoing creator benefits.
Spot on. And it's also interesting that as these ecosystems evolve, there's now talk of interoperability. I've seen buzz about a new BRC 721E standard that might allow bridging Ethereum NFTs to Bitcoin.
That's mind-blowing. So even though these blockchains were initially thought of as separate, the community is working on ways to integrate them, right?
Exactly. And it shows that users and developers are thinking beyond siloed environments to create true cross-chain interoperability. It could mean more fluid digital art markets and broader adoption.
Yes. So we're seeing an evolution where digital art, whether ordained on Bitcoin or minted on Ethereum, might eventually coexist and even interact with, say, real-world assets. That sounds like a game changer.
Absolutely. With trends pointing towards integrating digital art with real-world assets, so-called RWAs, the ability to fractionalize ownership could entirely upend how we perceive and trade both physical and digital art.
And this fractional ownership, along with cross-chain capabilities, could expand liquidity and make traditionally illiquid assets more accessible to a wider audience.
Yep, exactly. It's like opening up a marketplace where not just art, but even real estate or other tangible assets can be tokenized and traded more seamlessly. It's a huge step toward a more interconnected digital economy.
Right. But here's a challenge. Do you think that the strict immutability of Bitcoin ordinals might eventually stifle creative evolution compared to Ethereum's more flexible ecosystem?
That's a fair critique. While Ordinal's immutability offers a permanence that is uniquely appealing, it might limit adaptive innovation. Some creators find the idea of altering metadata over time or benefiting from royalties to be crucial to their work.
Yes, I see that. Right, so in that respect, Ethereum might stay ahead for dynamic digital art forms, even if Bitcoin stands out for archival quality and security.
Precisely. It boils down to what the creator or collector values most: absolute permanence and a guaranteed historical record on Bitcoin, or the feature-rich, flexible environment on Ethereum.
And humorously enough, it's like choosing between a luxury sports car with all the bells and whistles versus a classic vintage car that holds sentimental value. Both have their allure, right?
Exactly. It's that trade-off that makes this space so exciting. Both approaches have distinct advantages, and the market is likely to reward each for different reasons over time.
Absolutely. Looking forward, how do you see artificial intelligence impacting both these NFT ecosystems?
Well, AI is already starting to drive creative processes in digital art, whether it's generating new visuals or even creating music. It's like enhancing the art creation process, and both blockchain platforms could see more AI-driven experiments and tools in their ecosystems.
Yep. So essentially, the interaction between AI and NFTs might lead to more innovative, adaptive art forms that further blur the lines between digital and physical, while also potentially improving how these tokens are managed and traded.
Exactly. And with the continuous push for cross-chain interoperability, we might soon witness a convergence where the best features of both Bitcoin Ordinals and Ethereum NFTs, the security and permanence of Bitcoin, and the smart contract flexibility of Ethereum work in tandem.
That's definitely something to keep an eye on. It seems like both approaches have their own niche, and rather than one replacing the other, they might actually coexist, catering to different needs and tastes.
Absolutely, it's a diverse ecosystem now, and that diversity fuels innovation. I'm excited to see how creators and collectors navigate this space, keeping in mind the trade-offs and opportunities each platform offers.
And that really sums it up. A vibrant, evolving digital art landscape where both permanence and flexibility have their proud place in shaping the future of collectibles.